and I want to thank you. So we'll get right into it. So our first today we're going to talk about is Jim Harbaugh, the new head coach now of the Los Angeles Chargers, formerly now I guess we can say of the Michigan Wolverines. Jim now is coached in San Francisco, of course, from 2011 to 2014. Um, that led to three NFC title games, a Super Bowl, and in my opinion, I had to think that Harbaugh is probably for me growing up 10 years ago, which feels so weird already to say that, but feels 10 years ago, Harbaugh was probably one of the most polarizing, not beyond players and or beyond coaches, mix them together, just figures in pro football. But he was also like one of the most dominant and most successful coaches of that era. Like I think of, the Belichicks of the world, of course, the Carrolls, Pete Carroll. I mean, at the time, you're still looking at Mike McCarthy when he was with the Packers. Um, to me, those guys ring a ton of bells, and I guess too, both Harbaugh with John Harbaugh too, in that same time being one of the most dominant coaches of the NFL. But Jim was right there. I mean, Jim in 4 years goes 44 and 19 with one tie. You got three NFC championship berths in 4 years. One of them goes to the Super Bowl. They lost to the Ravens team that damn near won the whole thing after the outburst when stadium lights ran out of electricity. We all know about that. But you want to take a look at what Jim Harbaugh has done there for the 49ers. And yeah, they had the falling out. It was kind of an ugly ending um, in San Francisco. But look at now Michigan. He was there from 2015. So I guess we can officially say 2023, 2024, whatever you want to consider the national championship. But now Jim is on a route to try and, I guess, save the LA Chargers. I mean, he becomes the 19th coach in team's history. I want to say it's probably the third in LA Charger history. Thinking about all the way back to San Diego, RIP, San Diego Chargers. But I mean, looking at what Harbaugh brings to the table, I have it right here. He finished Michigan tenure with 6 seasons of 10 plus wins. Usually that's the threshold everyone likes to look at for the difference when it comes to wins. And of course, capped it off national championship and all the other things that you look at with Harbaugh, at least at Michigan, are gone. What I mean by that, I mean by that saying the block punt against Michigan State, not being able to beat Urban Meyer, not being able to beat Ryan Day. Winning cures everything. Absolutely, it does. And with Harbaugh, it's no different. He's going to be, you can look at the Michigan thing, how it ends when it cultivates for the national championship. And you can look there and say, well, why wouldn't he come back? Why wouldn't he come back? It's the beginning of a new era, especially now in college football. The transfer portal has pretty much made college football free agency. Say what you want. Um, but guys are not tied down to schools anymore. I think one of the reasons Nick Saban retired is you probably look at it, Saban's 72 years old, and you probably look at it and say, you can say the long work days and say what you want during the season, but recruiting wise, trying to bring kids in, fit the mold of being what Alabama football is all about. And then you look at it, I work my ass off to try and get this kid to where we want him to be. But he's upset because he doesn't get the playing time that he wants or feels that he deserves as a freshman or as a sophomore. Then he leaves. And then that kid goes to play, when you're an Alabama transfer, you can pretty much go wherever you want. Say that kid goes to Florida, he'll play 2 years at Florida, find his way in the NFL draft, and so on and so forth. That some of these coaches, I kind of feel like, what's the point? What's the point in putting all this effort into finding, you know, a handful of kids that you think might really be special, but if they're not willing to sit for a little bit of time, they want to play right away. And I don't blame these kids coming out of high school. If you're being recruited by the Ohio States of the world, the Michigans of the world, the Alabamas, the LSUs, the mecca of college football, You might not want to sit right away, but at 18 years old, going up a kid against a kid who's been in the program for 3, 4, 5 years, hell, even in this day and age, we're talking like 7, 8, 9 years, that kid has some serious disadvantages when it talks about just physically where he's at, where he's at on on the spectrum of, are you ready to play football? Are you ready to go to the NFL? There's people at different levels in college football all around. Plenty of college football players will never play football again after their college career. Most, most. I don't even think that's a hot take to say that most will not play beyond college football. And then you look at it in the sense too of, like Harbaugh, once you win the national championship, what's next? I mean, when Pete Carroll left USC in '08 or 2007, yes, you're fresh off national championships and a dominant run, but where Harbaugh and Carroll kind of hold some similarities is Michigan going to get sanctioned for the whole sign stealing, video recording practice? Is Michigan going to get in trouble for that? And that's really the big takeaway from the whole thing, is that if Michigan is going to get in trouble, and I'm sure they always say, "Oh, we don't know about this, we don't know about it." It's Harbaugh's program. He probably knows after getting a 3-game suspension or 4-game, whatever it was, that there's probably going to be more repercussions coming your way. And whether that's postseason play, recruiting, taking away any sort of wins, vacating anything. And I don't blame him when a team offers you a 5-year contract. I predicted this once the national championship was over. I said Harbaugh's going to the NFL. Why? Number one, you have a team that is desperate to win, the Chargers. But for Harbaugh personally too, where's the challenge? I know all these coaches probably function like they want the challenge just as much as they want to win, they want to lose. They want a challenge that makes them work hard, put in the work, and then rise to the occasion, just like all these coaches do when they build up programs. They don't instantly come in, ranked top 5, and then that's it. Some of these guys come in. I mean, Michigan was not a quintessential #1 program when Harbaugh got there. You bring it in, you bring in the right pieces, right coaching staff, right players, develop those players, and you find a way to make all of that work, and it cultivates a national championship. Yes, it took 8 years to do for Harbaugh, but that's the apex of like how high do you want to go? And then I look at now, so the Chargers, they're a challenge. They're a challenge, and in the sense too, most coaches are not going to leave a pretty cozy job, or any person would take a cozy job on a gamble. You're going to go to a team that either has a high draft pick, has a franchise quarterback, or is committed to signing a franchise quarterback. And this year's free agency quarterbacks, there's Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins. We know what Vikings are going to do with him. We're not sure yet. But in that sense, too, Justin Herbert, possibly a generational talent at the quarterback position. And he spits on your shoes because Brandon Staley couldn't really get much out of him for this past year. And they were dwindling 500 team, below 500 team, um, with some of their coaching hires since Herbert's been drafted. And I think what Harbaugh sees is, I'm going to take a Herbert kid and elevate him just as Mike McDaniel did with Tua. Tua Tagovailoa, I don't think was a top 10 to 15 quarterback um 2 years ago, before McDaniel got there 2 years ago. McDaniel got there last year. Tua, had he played probably every game, I would have assumed he would have led the league in passing yards. Led him, I believe, in passing yards per attempt. It was right up there for passer rating. I'm not sure if Tua won the passing gig or not, but what I mean by that is, in a sense, Harbaugh is going to a place with some stability. I mean, some I don't want to say course to action, but there's a road there that can lead to playoff success, that can lead to a Super Bowl. D'Amico Ryans now has CJ Stroud, first year coach, signed up for something that you know you're going to get a franchise quarterback. Sean Payton, left the booth at Fox to try and do that in Denver. I don't really think it's gonna, obviously it's not working out with Russell Wilson, but when you look in the sense too that Denver's gonna move on from Wilson, and there's a number of quarterbacks. Sean Payton, I don't think is gonna be just waiting around to find this quarterback. I think there might be a push for Kirk Cousins in Denver. I think there might be a push for Baker Mayfield. If Sean's gonna want to get his guy, and he will, um, I don't think that that is anything out of the question. But like, are we gonna now look at Herbert? We all think he's probably a top five player, talent wise. I mean, talent wise, you can say he's up there with Rodgers. When Rodgers was at his peak, you can say right now he's maybe up there with Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, guys that have the natural ability to play quarterback. And we look at where Herbert sits. Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. Mahomes has two Super Bowl rings. And who knows how this week and the rest of the season goes. Could have three Super Bowls by the end of this year. Josh Allen has won multiple playoff games. Aaron Rodgers, four-time MVP. We don't have that for Justin Herbert. We don't even have the playoff success. We choked last year away with Jacksonville, and it's not just Herbert. So don't spin my words around. But what I mean is the Chargers don't have playoff success with Herbert, and I don't think that's a fault of Justin's. Justin's a good quarterback. I think any of these teams would love to have Justin Herbert in a heartbeat. Looking at exactly what he brings to the table, the upside of Justin Herbert is far greater for Jim Harbaugh to come in and do than the upside of, say, if he would have taken the Atlanta job that Belichick, everyone says is likely his. The Bill Belichick gig in Atlanta, it's not going to be Desmond Ridder. It's not. It's not going to be. Whether that's Justin Fields, whether that's someone else, but it's not going to be Desmond Ridder. But the Atlanta job is a lot more of a risk. And that might be more of a gig that Belichick is suited for. Because I think, with the six Super Bowl rings, they speak for themselves. Teams are going to be willing to be more patient with Bill Belichick because of that. I mean, Bill Belichick is probably the greatest coach in the history of the National Football League. Resume wise, there's no one really that rivals it. It really isn't. Um, so I think Harbaugh. I'm glad he's getting back into the NFL. I'm not a Harbaugh hater. Um, I know people who are a Harbaugh hater. They don't love him. They don't love what he does. The antics. I get it. I really do. But I think for the betterment of the AFC West now, we don't know how more longer or how much longer Andy Reid's going to be in KC for, which could drastically change that franchise. We don't know, what Denver's going to do with Sean Payton. We now have Jim Harbaugh and Antonio Pierce with the Raiders. We have no idea what the Raiders are going to even look like next year. They don't have, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, they are tied in for a long time. But the feeling is that they're not going to keep around Garoppolo. But I mean, you look in a sense too. I don't really think that you can fight that. Um, that Harbaugh going to be the Chargers now new head coach is not going to have drastic effects on exactly whatever LA wants to do going forward. And it's going to change a lot. They're going to have to get rid of some cap space. Khalil Mack, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. Really disappointed last year. So you look at the LA Chargers team. I think with Harbaugh going back, it's gonna be just fine. Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL. I have no problem seeing that. being a success for LA.